Wonder of the Wasteland, Chapter 5. Adam's dull eyelids opened on a dim, gray desert dawn. The coming of the dawn was in his mind, and it showed pale through his shut lids. He could not hold back the hours. Something had happened in the night, and he would never be the same again, with a sharp pang, a sense of incomprehensible loss. Adam felt in him the old, unreasoning, instinctive boy. And there was more, too deep and too subtle for him to tell. It had to do with a feminine strain in him, a sweetness and purity inherited from his mother and developed by her teachings. It had separated him from his feelings and from his brother Gerd, and kept him aloof from a baseness common to their comrades. Nevertheless, the wildness of this raw, uncouth, primitive West had been his undoing. It was with bitterness that Adam again faced the growing light. All he could do was to resign himself to fate. The joy of life, the enchantments, all that had made him feel different from other boys and hide his dreams failed now in this cool, dark morning of reality. He could not understand the severity of the judgment he meted out to himself. His spirit suffered an ineffaceable blunting, and the tight drawing knot in his breast, the gnawing of remorse, the strange, dark oppression, these grew and reached a climax, until something gave way within him, and there was a sinking of the heart, a weary and inscrutable feeling. Then he remembered Margarita, and the very life and current of his blood seemed to change. Like a hot wave, the memory of Margarita surged over Adam. Her strange new sweetness, the cunning of her when she waylaid him in the dead of the night, the clinging lisomeness of her and the whispered incoherence that needed no translation, the inevitableness of the silent, imperious demand of her presence, unashamed and insistent. Adam leaped out of his blankets, breaking up this mood and thought by violent action. For Adam then, the sunrise was glorious, the valley was beautiful, the desert was wild and free, the earth was an immense region to explore, and nature, however insatiable and inexorable, was prodigal of compensations. He drank a sweet cup that held one drop of poison. Life swelled in his breast. He wished he were an Indian. As he walked along, there would flash into mind words spoken long ago by his mother. "My son, you take things too seriously. You feel too intensely the ordinary moments of life." He understood her now, but he could not distinguish ordinary things from great things. How could anything be little? Margarita's greeting was at once a delight and a surprise. Her smile, the light of her dusky eyes, would have made any man happier. But there was a subtle air about her this morning that gave Adam a slight shock, an undefined impression that he represented less to Margarita than he had yesterday. Then came the shrill whistle of the downriver boat. Idle men flocked toward the dock. When Adam reached the open space on the bank before the dock, he found it crowded with an unusual number of men, all manifestly more than ordinarily interested in something concerning the boat. By slipping through the mesquites, Adam got around to the edge of the crowd. A tall, gaunt man clad in black strode off the gangplank. His height, his form, his gait were familiar to Adam. He had seen that embroidered flowery vest with its silver star conspicuously in sight, and the brown beardless face with its square jaw and seamy lines. "Collishaw!" ejaculated Adam in dismay. He recognized in this man one whom he had known at Ehrenberg, a gambling, gunfighting sheriff to whom Gerd had become attached. As his glance swept back of Collishaw, his pulse beat quicker. The next passenger to stride off the gangplank was a very tall, superbly built young man. Adam would have known that form in a crowd of 1,000. His heart leaped with a great throb. Gerd, his brother. Gerd looked up, his handsome, heated face, bold and keen and reckless, flashed in the sunlight. His piercing gaze swept over the crowd upon the bank. "Hello, Adam," he yelled with gay, hard laugh. Then he prodded Collishaw and pointed up at Adam. "There he is, we found him." Adam plunged away into the thickets of mesquites, and indifferent to the clawing thorns, he didn't halt until he was far down the bank. It died hard, that regurgitation of brother love. It represented most of his life and all of his home associations and the memories of youth. The strength of it proved his loyalty to himself. How warm and fine that suddenly revived emotion, how deep-seated beyond his control. He could have sobbed out over the pity of it, the loss of it, the fallacy of it. Plucked out by the roots, it yet lived hidden in the depths of him. Adam, in his flight to be alone, had yielded to the amaze and shame and fury stirred in him by a realization of joy in the mere sight of his brother, who hated him. For years his love had fought against the gradual truth of Gerd's hate. He'd not been able to prove it, but he felt it. Adam had no fear of Gerd, nor any reason why he could not face him, except this tenderness of which he was ashamed. When he had fought down the hawkish sentiment, he would show Gerd and Collishaw what he was made of. Money, that was Gerd's motive, with an added possibility of further desire to dominate and hound. "I'll fool him," said Adam resolutely, as he got up to return. Adam did not know exactly what he was going to do, but he was certain that he had reached the end of his tether. He went back to the village by a roundabout way. Turning a sharp curve in the canyon, he came suddenly upon a number of workmen, mostly Mexicans. They were standing under a wooden trestle that had been built across the canyon at this narrow point. All of them appeared to be gazing upward, and naturally Adam directed his gaze likewise. Thus, without warning, he saw the distorted and ghastly face of a man hanging by the neck on a rope tied to the trestle. The spectacle gave Adam a shock. "That's Collishaw's work," muttered Adam darkly, and he remembered stories told of the sheriff's grim hand in more than one act of border justice. What a hard country. In front of the village store, Adam encountered Maryville, and he asked him for particulars about the execution. "Well, I don't know much," replied the old watchman, scratching his head. "There's been some placer miners shot and robbed up the river. This Collishaw is a regular sure-enough sheriff, taking the law into himself. Reckon there ain't any law. Well, he and his deputies say they tracked that murdering gang to Picacho and swore they identified one of them. Arrhenius stuck up for that greaser. There was a hot argument, and by gosh, I just swore Collishaw was going to draw on Arrhenius. But Arrhenius backed down, as any man not crazy would have done. The greaser swore by all his virgins that he wasn't the man, and was swearing he could prove it when the rope choked him off. I don't know, Adam. I don't know. I was for waiting a little to give the feller a chance, but Collishaw came down here to hang somebody, and you bet he's going to do it." "I know him, Maryville, and you're betting right," replied Adam forcefully. "Adam, one of his men is a fine-looking young chap that sure must be your brother. Now, ain't he?" "Yes, you're right about that, too." Well, you don't seem powerful glad, son. Just be careful what you say to Collishaw. He's a hard, and I reckon he's square as he sees justed, but he don't ring right to an old-timer like me. He courts the crowd, and he's been asking for you. There he comes now." The sheriff appeared, approaching with several companions, and halted before the store. His was a striking figure, picturesque, commanding, but his face was repellent. His massive head was set on a bull neck of swarthy and weathered skin like wrinkled leather. His broad face of similar hue appeared a mass of crisscrossed lines, deep at the eyes and long on each side of the cruel, thin-lipped, tight-shut mouth. His chin stuck out like a square rock, and his eyes, dark and glittering, roved incessantly in all directions. He'd been trained to see men before they saw him. Adam knew that Collinshaw had seen him first, and acting upon the resolution that he had made down in the thicket, he strode over to the sheriff. "Collinshaw, I've been told you wanted me," said Adam. "Hello there, Larry. Yes, I was inquiring about you," replied Collinshaw with the accent of a Texan. "What do you want with me?" asked Adam. Collinshaw drew Adam aside out of the earshot of other men. "It's a matter of that little gambling debt you owed Gerd." "Excuse me," he replied in a low voice. "Collinshaw, are you threatening me with some such job as you put up on that poor greaser?" inquired Adam sarcastically as he waved his hand up the canyon. Probably nothing could have surprised this hardened sheriff, but he straightened up with a jerk and shed his confidential and admonishing air. "No, I can't arrest you on gambling debt," he replied bluntly, "but I'm sure going to make you pay." "You are like hell," retorted Adam. "What had you to do with it? If Gerd owed you money in that game, I'm not responsible, and I didn't pay because I caught Gerd cheating. I'm not much of a gambler, Collinshaw, but I'll bet you a stack of gold 20s against your fancy vest that Gerd never collects a dollar of his crooked deal." With that, Adam turned on his heel and strode off toward the river. His hard-earned independence added something to the wrong done him by these men. He saw himself in a different light. The rankling of the injustice he'd suffered at Ehrenberg had softened only in regard to the girl in the case. Remembering her again, it seemed her part in his alienation from Gerd did not loom so darkly and closely. Margarita had come between the affair and the present hour. This other girl had really been nothing to him, but Margarita had become everything. A gratefulness, a big, generous warmth stirred in Adam's heart for the dark-eyed Mexican girl. What did it matter who she was? In this desert, he must learn to adjust differences of class and race and habit in relation to the wildness of the time and the place. In the open sandy space leading to the houses near the river, Adam met Arrhenius. The usually genial foreman appeared pale, somber, and sick. To Adam's surprise, Arrhenius would not talk about the hanging. Adam had another significant estimate of the character of Collinshaw. Arrhenius, however, was not so close-lipped concerning Gerd Larry. "Quien sabe, senor," he concluded. "Maybe it's best for you. Margarita is a she-cat. You are my friend, I should tell you. But, well, senor, if you would keep Margarita, look out for your brother." Adam gaped his astonishment and had not a word for Arrhenius as he turned away. It took him some time to realize the content of Arrhenius' warning and advice, but what fixed itself in Adam's mind was the fact that Gerd had run across Margarita and had been attracted by her. How perfectly natural. How absolutely inevitable. Adam could not remember any girl he'd ever admired or liked in all his life that Gerd hadn't taken away from him. Among the boys at home, it used to be a huge joke in which Adam had good-naturedly cheered. All for Gerd. Adam could recall the time when he'd been happy to give up anything or anyone to his brother, but out here in the desert, where he was beginning to assimilate the meaning of a man's fight for his life and his possessions, he felt vastly different. Moreover, he had gone too far with Margarita, regrettable as the fact was. She belonged to him, and his principles were such that he believed he owed her a like return of affection. And besides that, loyalty and guardianship. Margarita was only 17 years old. No doubt Gerd would fascinate her if she was not kept out of his way. But suppose she liked Gerd and wants him, as she wanted me, muttered Adam, answering a divining flash of the inevitable order of things. Still, he repudiated that. His intellect told him what to expect, but his feeling was too strong to harbor doubt of Margarita. Only last night she had changed the world for him, opened his eyes to life not as it was dreamed, but as it was lived. Adam found the wife of Arrhenius at home alone. "Signora, where is Margarita?" "Margarita is there," she replied with dark, eloquent glance upon Adam and a slow gesture toward the riverbank. Adam soon espied Gerd and Margarita on the riverbank some few rods below the landing place. Here was a pretty sandy nook shaded by a large mesquite and somewhat out of the sight of the passers-by. Two enormous wheels connected by an iron bar, a piece of discarded mill machinery, stood in the shade of the tree, and Margarita sat on the crossbar, and Gerd stood beside her. They were close together, facing a broad sweep of the river and the wonderland of colored peaks. They did not hear Adam's approach on the soft sand. "Senorita, one look from your midnight eyes and I fell in love with you," Gerd was declaring with gay passion, and his hand upon her was as bold as his speech. "You little Spanish princess, beautiful as the moon and the stars, hidden in this mining camp, a desert flower born to blush unseen. It was here that Adam walked around the high wheels to confront them. For him, the moment was exceedingly poignant, but despite the tumult within him, he preserved a cool and quiet exterior. Margarita's radiance vanished in surprise. "Well, if it ain't Adam," ejaculated her companion. "You son of a gun, why, you've changed." "Gerd," began Adam, and then his voice halted. To meet his brother this way was a tremendous ordeal, and Gerd's presence seemed to charge the very air. Worship of this magnificent brother had been the strongest thing in Adam's life, next to love of mother. To see him again, Gerd Larry's face was beautiful, yet virile and strong. The beauty was mere perfection of feature. The big curved mouth, the square chin, the straight nose, the large hazel green eyes full of laughter and love of life, the broad forehead and clustering fair hair, all these features that made him singularly handsome. His skin was clear, brown tan with a tinge of red. Adam saw no change in Gerd, except perhaps an intensifying of expression of wildness which made him all the more fascinating. For Adam, the mocking thing about Gerd's godlike beauty was the fact that it deceived. At heart, at soul, Gerd was as false as hell. "Adam, are you going to shake hands?" queried Gerd, lazily extending his arm. "You sure strike me queer, boy." "No," replied Adam, and his quick revolving thoughts grasped at Gerd's slipshod speech. Gerd had absorbed even the provincial words and idioms of the uncouth West. "All right, suit yourself," said Gerd. "I reckon you see I'm rather pleasantly engaged." "Yes, I see," returned Adam bitterly with a fleeting glance at Margarita. She had recovered from her surprise and now showed cunning feminine curiosity. "Gerd, I met Collishaw and he had the gall to brace me for that gambling debt, and I've hunted you up to tell you that you cheated me, and I'll not pay it." "Oh, yes, you will," replied Gerd smilingly. "I will not," said Adam forcefully. "Boy, you'll pay it or I'll take it out of your hide," declared Gerd, slowly frowning as if a curious hint of some change in Adam had dawned upon him. "You can't take it that way or any other way," retorted Adam. "But I say I didn't cheat," remonstrated Gerd, evidently making a last stand of argument to gain his end. "You lie," flashed Adam. "You know it. I know it. Gerd, let's waste no words. I told you at Ehrenberg, after you played that shabby trick on me over the girl there, I told you I was through with you for good." Gerd seemed to realize with wonder and chagrin that he'd now to deal with a man. How the change in his expression thrilled at him. What relief came to him in the consciousness that he was now stronger than Gerd. He'd never been certain of that. "Through and be damned," exclaimed Gerd, and he took his arm from around Margarita and rose from his leaning posture to his lofty height. "I'm sick of your milksop ideas. All I want to use is that money. If you don't pony up with it, I'll tear your clothes off getting it. Savvy that?" "Huh," laughed Adam tauntingly. "I say to you what I said to Collishaw. You will like hell." Gerd Larry's lips framed curses that were inaudible. He was astounded. The red flamed his neck and face. "I'll meet you after I get through talking to this girl," he said. "Any time you want," rejoined Adam bitingly, "but I'll have my say now, once and for all. The worm is turned, Gerd Larry. Your goose has stopped laying golden eggs. I'll take no more burdens off your shoulders. You bullied me all my life. You hated me. Oh, I know it. I remember so well. You robbed me of toys, clothes, playmates, then girlfriends, then money, then a worthless woman. You're a fraud, a cheat, and a liar, and you've fallen in with your kind out here. You're going straight to hell." The whiteness of Gerd's face attested to his roused passion, but he had more restraint than Adam. He was older, and the difference of age between them showed markedly. "So you followed me out here to say all that?" "No, not altogether," replied Adam. "I came after Margarita." "Came after Margarita?" echoed Gerd. "Is that her name? Say, Adam, is this one of your goody tricks, rescuing a damsel in distress sort of thing? You and I have fallen out more than once over that." Gerd, we've fallen out forever," interrupted Adam. And then he turned to the girl. "Margarita, I want you." "But it's none of your damn business," burst out Gerd hotly, interrupting in turn. "What do you care about a Mexican girl?" "I won't stand for your interference. You clear out and let me alone." "But Gerd, it is my business," returned Adam haltingly. Some inward force dragged at his tongue. "She's my girl." "What?" ejaculated Gerd incredulously. Then he bent down to peer into Margarita's face, and from that he swept a flashing, keen glance at Adam. His eyes were wonderful, then intensely bright, quickened with and sharpened with swift turns of thought. "Boy, you don't mean you're on friendly terms with this greaser girl?" "Yes," Adam replied. "You've made love to her," cried Gerd, and the radiance of his face then was beyond Adam's understanding. "Yes." Gerd violently controlled what must have been a spasm of fiendish glee. His amaze, deep as it was, seemed not to be his predominant feeling, but that very amaze was something to force exquisitely upon Adam how far he had fallen. The moment was dark, hateful, far-reaching in its effect, impossible to realize. Gerd's glance flashed back and forth from Adam to Margarita, but he had not yet grasp what was the tragic thing for Adam, the truth of how fatefully far this love affair had fallen. Adam's heart sank like lead in his breast. What humiliation he suffered if he'd betrayed himself. Hard he fought for composition and composure and dignity to hide his secret. Adam, in matters of the heart, where two gentlemen admire the lady in question, the choice is always left to her, began Gerd, with something of mockery in his rich voice. A devil gleamed from him then, and the look of him, the stature, the gallant action of him as he bowed before Margarita fascinated Adam, even in his miserable struggle to appear a man. But Gerd, you've known Margarita only a few moments, he expostulated, and the sound of his voice made him weak. How can you put such a choice to her? It's an insult. Adam, that is for Margarita to decide, responded Gerd. Women change. It is something you have not learned. Then as he turned to Margarita, he seemed to blaze with magnetism. The grace of him and the beauty of him in that moment made of him a perfect physical embodiment of the emotions of which he was master. He knew his power over women. Margarita, Adam and I are brothers. We are always falling in love with the same girl. You must choose between us. Adam would tie you down and keep you from the eyes of other men. I would leave you free as a bird. And he bent over to whisper in her ear with his strong brown hand on her arm, at once gallant and yet masterful. The scene was a nightmare to Adam. How could this be something that was happening? But he had sight. Margarita seemed a transformed creature, shy, coy, alluring, with a half-veiled, dusky eyes, heavy-lidded, lighted with the same fire that had shone in them for Adam. Margarita, will you come? Cried Adam, goaded to the end. No, she replied softly. I beg of you, come, implored Adam. The girl shook her black head. A haunting mockery hung around her, and her slight smile in the light of her face. She radiated a strange glow like the warm shade of an opal. Older she seemed to Adam, and surer of herself, and somewhat deeper in that mystic obsession of passion. He had often sensed in her no spiritual concept of what Adam regarded as his obligation to her could ever dawn in that little brain. She loved her pretty face and beautiful body. She gloried in her power over men, and the new man she felt to be still unwon, who was stronger of instinct and harder to hold, under whose brutal hand she would cringe and thrill and pant and fight. Him she would choose. So Adam read Margarita in that moment. If he had felt love for her, which he doubted, it was dead. A great pity flooded over him. It seemed that of the three there, he was the only one who was true and who understood. Margarita, have you forgotten last night? Asked Adam huskily. Ah, senor, so long ago and far away, she said. Adam whirled abruptly, and plunging into the thicket of mesquites, he tore away through, unmindful of the thorns. When he reached his quarters, there was blood on his hands and his face, but the sting of the thorns was nothing to the hurt in his heart. He lay down. Again, he whispered. Gerd has come, and it's the same old story, only worse. But it's better so. I didn't know her. Arrhenius knew, he told me. And I dreamed so many foolish things. Yes, it's better. I didn't love her right. It was something she roused. I never loved her, but if I did love her, it's gone. It's not loss that stabs me now. It's Gerd. Again, and I ran off from him. So long ago and far away, she said. Are all women like that? I can't believe it. I never will. I remember my mother. End of chapter.